Thanks to an incredibly kind donation to the channel by a patron named Gojatron, we have the Empire Strikes Back Retro Collection figures, the complete set, in the studio. Well, minus that crappy board game, but no one wants that anyway. And in today's video, we're going to take a closer look at these toys, and in particular, I'm going to talk about where these are going to fit in my collection, so stay tuned.
Come with me, toy fans.
Hey toy fans, my name is Tony and welcome to Analog Toys, where we're obsessed with bringing you the history of vintage toys and action figures. Now in today's video, I'm not going to review each individual figure and all of its features and accessories and all that kind of thing. That's already been covered in an excellent video over on the Retro Blasting YouTube channel, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. What I would really like to talk about today is some of the product choices that Hasbro made here. But also how these toys are going to fit into my own personal collection. I must start by saying that I can't compare these to the first wave of retro collection figures that came out last year because I did not collect those. The only one I have in my collection is Grand Moff Tarkin, who was once again packed in with a crappy board game, just like the Snowspeeder Luke as in this wave. And the only reason I have this Grand Moff Tarkin is this was also kindly donated to the channel by a supporter named Mark. The one thing I have noticed, though, just looking at the Grand Moff Tarkin figure and these figures, is that Hasbro seem to have somewhat improved the quality of the card backs, but they have still given them this crappy, dog-eared edging all the way around, this weathered edging, which I just think looks terrible. But never mind, we're going to break these figures out of the bubbles and have a good close-up look at them. The first thing that really stands out to me here is that we have been given the trio of heroes, so Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia and Han Solo. But we've been given two of the characters in their Hoth outfits and another character in what they've called the Bespin outfit, but you know, could be his Dagobah outfit, whatever. Why didn't Hasbro give us the three figures either all in a Hoth outfit or all in a Bespin outfit? The choice doesn't really make sense to me here. It's not really going to affect me because I've already got a decent vintage collection, so I can swap out the Bespin Luke here and put my Hoth Luke next to these two, and they look pretty good together. I must say that the Han Solo figure, the paint on his face, they don't seem to have got the colour quite correct. Maybe it's just the vintage one that I have. Maybe this is a rare variant or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I've only got the one in my collection, nothing else to compare it to. But the paint on the face on the retro collection one seems to be there's a lot more saturation in the colour, if that's the right term. Now let's talk about Boba Fett, the one figure that everyone tells me is exceedingly hard to get. I mean, anything Boba Fett that comes out, you know, sells out just like that. So it would have made sense, I think, for Hasbro when they packed these into a case to maybe pack all the other figures, short pack the other figures and put a lot more Boba Fett's into the box. But, you know, they don't do that. They seem to like to drive up demand for certain products. But let's take a look at Boba Fett first of all. Now, for me personally, one of the things I really like about having this additional Boba Fett is because in my collection display, I've displayed all of the bounty hunters on a shelf minus Boba Fett because I only have one vintage Boba Fett in my collection, and he's displayed on a separate shelf with the Slave One. So this additional piece here, which, you know, I haven't had to fork out a huge amount of money for an extra vintage figure, I'm now able to simply put this onto the bounty hunter shelf and fill out the full collection of bounty hunters and have a second Boba Fett who's going to stay down with the Slave One. Now the Bespin Luke figure and the Yoda figure are two of my all-time favourite vintage Star Wars figures, evidenced by the fact that they're two of the few that I've actually got on the original card backs. And I like to display these in my display cases. I like to have the figures standing there in front of their carded examples. But what I've also always wanted to do is be able to display Luke and Yoda with the training backpack that was brought out by Kenner back in the day. And again, having a second set of these figures now without having to fork out all the money for a rare vintage original, I can now put the backpack on this Luke figure, put Yoda in there, and then in my display, I've got that bit of variety where I can display the figures on their own as they came off the card backs and combined together with the backpack. And I'm really, really pleased to be able to display it this way. I've had the backpack for a long time and I didn't want to display my originals in that fashion, but now I've got the option of the two. Now with the Lando figure, he also suffers from Hasbro's probably poor product choice here. As I said, if they had have given us the trio of characters all in their Bespin outfits rather than 2 in Hoth outfits and 1 in a Bespin outfit, then Lando would be able to interact with some of the other figures. But Lando was never on Hoth, so he can't interact with the Leia and Han Solo that we've got here, and he's kind of left out in the wind. He's probably going to be the most least desirable figure in this particular set. Now we get to the one unreleased figure that everybody wants, but I've mentioned it before. Hasbro pack it in with a board game that you don't want, so you got to pay double the price, just like they did with Tarkin in the first wave. But this is a nice figure. I do like this. I like the fact that I can use this figure in the Snowspeeder rather than just using all these multiple X-Wing Lukes like most people display their vintage toys. I think the gloves are well molded. I like the addition of the grappling hook gun. That's pretty cool. But I am disappointed that they didn't give us a removable helmet. I know that removable helmets weren't really introduced into the vintage Star Wars line until the Return of the Jedi releases. But I think it would have been nice in this case to give the figure a removable helmet. That would have been pretty cool. Now, given Hasbro's track record, and what I mean by that is last year when they brought out the first wave of retro collection figures, they gave us 6 of the original 12 figures. And they never gave us any of the other figures. So I think it's very unlikely that we are going to get more retro collection Empire Strikes Back figures, which makes the decisions here even more frustrating for me. Now, as I mentioned, for someone who's already got a vintage collection, these can very easily slot into my display pretty seamlessly. But for someone who does not have a collection of vintage Star Wars figures and perhaps cannot afford the original vintage figures, it really would have been cool if Hasbro had have focused on one environment when they brought these figures out. So made them all Bespin versions or all Hoth versions or whatever it was. But this scattershot mixture here, I would think it would make a modern day collector who's maybe just getting back into it and wants to pick these up and start a collection. The choices here don't give you much display variety, I suppose, which is it doesn't affect anything for me, but I think it would potentially detract from the appeal of this line for people who are just starting out collecting. Overall though, I think the figures are very, very well made. They do fit seamlessly in with your vintage figures. You know, you really have to conduct a close-up inspection to identify the original from the retro collection, the vintage from the retro. Now, I'm pretty sure that Hasbro are more than likely going to bring out another retro collection wave, maybe next year, and most likely they're going to focus on Return of the Jedi figures. So I hope that if there's anyone from Hasbro watching this video, you kind of take note of what we've been saying here, and that if you're going to bring out a 6 or 7 figure wave of Return of the Jedi figures, that you give us like all Endor figures or all Tatooine figures from Jabba's Palace. But don't do a mixture. You know, don't give us Skiff Guard Lando in disguise and then give us an Endor Han Solo, which they probably won't do because of the soft goods jacket, but you know, who knows. So if you can find these in the wild and they are going to fill a place in your collection, I do recommend picking them up. But please be cautious because of Hasbro's terrible distribution. There have been a lot of scalpers who pick these up who are now trying to peddle them on eBay for ridiculous prices, certainly for like the Boba Fett and the Bespin Lukes. Try and find them in the wild. If you can't, I am disappointed, but perhaps maybe write a letter of complaint to Hasbro around their poor distribution. I am very pleased to have these in my collection, and I am sincerely grateful to Gojatron for his very, very kind donation. So thank you all for watching, and if you like this video and you'd like to check out our earlier video about the retro collection release from last year, you can click right here. Or to check out our Toy Histories episode covering the development of the original vintage Kenner toy line, you can click right here. May the Force be with you.